Welcome to Kenpo Corner number 7. In this episode, I want to talk about two different lines. You have the critical distance line and you have the center line of your body. So let's first talk about the center line. The center line is the 6 to 8 inches of the body, your face, your solar plexus, your groin, that you want to protect. This is why we don't stand and fight from a square horse position. We call it a training stance. This is why we go to our fighting stance or neutral stance or neutral bow, because it's easier to protect this than it is this. Also, this is why we cover the center line of the body when we block. We don't want to block straight here because then we could get hit on the other side. That's why our blocks are not straight up and down. They're not short. We want to over-exaggerate that motion, cover the entire center line, so that when we get into a fight and cut that short, we're still going to cover that area that we need. That's why we over-exaggerate some of our motions. So every time you block, you always want to go from point A to point B, covering that center line, whether it's left to right or right to left. So if you're doing it inward, we're going to cover that center line. We're going to do it outward. We're going to cover that entire center line. We're not going to guess and hope that we read the strike right as being a left or a right. We're going to cover the whole area in case we miss. The other thing that we would do to help protect that center line is positioning versus blocking. Okay, yes, we block, but a lot of times you're not going to get that block in fast enough for that first strike unless you're aware of the situation that's going on and you're already prepared. That's why we always position to the inside, to the outside. We step back because we want to get out of the line of that strike. So as a punch is coming, we are going to get out of the way of it. This way, if we miss the block, it doesn't matter because we're still protected. That center line is still out of the way, which is what we're always trying to do, is get that center line out of the equation. Whether we're doing an inside block, even if we're doing a blush block, we're just slightly stepping out just enough so that the strike will go past us. The same thing is applicable when it comes to a kick. If someone throws a snap kick, you want to step to the outside of that kick, or you want to step back out of the critical distance line of the kick. Okay, and that's a center line. That's that line that we always want to protect. Now, the other line that we were talking about is the one I just mentioned, is the critical distance line. This is a very important line. It's just as important as the center line. The critical distance line is the line between you and your opponent. The 3 feet that's going to determine the outcome of a fight. As long as I stay outside his critical distance line and they stay outside mine, nothing can happen. We can argue, we can yell, we can kick, punch, no one's going to get hurt. Now this only applies to the natural weapons, your hands and your feet. When it comes to man-made weapons such as guns, knives, sticks, things like that, that is a whole new set of rules and a whole new set of critical distance lines that need to be learned. Then you have different martial arts. That's what I was trying to say. You have different types of martial arts. You have some like Sansu that are grabbers, judo players. They're really good. Once they get their hands on you, you know that you could be in trouble. Then you have more martial arts like Taekwondo. They're really good at kicks. They're good at kicking you from all different types of directions. But all of these arts all have a critical distance line, a line in which there's not much can be done. Okay, and whatever is done is going to be so obvious you should be able to react to it. So always maintain that critical distance line. Don't let anybody cross that critical distance line until you're ready. You control that line. You control the timing of the fight. As long as you maintain that critical distance line, they step forward, you step back. They step back, you step forward. Okay? Just always watch that line. The other thing you want to keep in mind is the timing of things, okay? A critical distance line is only there as long as you maintain it. But once they start crossing it or they jump into it or attack into it, so you always have to be aware of that line. Know what your critical distance line is, and it's going to change. You have a guy that's 6'2", he has a much longer reach with both his legs and his feet, so his critical distance line is going to be much longer than your critical distance line. So you've got to take that into consideration, okay? Take into consideration, like I said, do they have any other martial arts training? And usually you can tell by the way they act, they stand. And if you're in a dojo, you'll know. Just ask them. I fought a guy one time during a sparring class, and he was Sansu in Taekwondo, which really made it difficult to maintain that critical distance line because I knew he could kick me if I got to the right sweet spot, and I knew he could grab me if they came in too close. So there's different ways you can handle things like that. One thing to consider when dealing with critical distance line, also with center lines, is going, like I talked about, positioning versus blocking. Okay, keep it a circular motion. Okay, instead of stepping forward and back, sidestep things. Go to the left, go to the right, angle back and to the right. Get out of their critical distance line, but also get out of their line of fire. This is a good way to deal with that critical distance line. Another way is by jamming somebody. As soon as you see the foot go up into a kick position, you just come right in on that critical distance line and take over the fight, the control of the fight. So we have a center line, which is the 6 to 8 inches of your body that you always want to protect and maintain. That's why when we teach you your sparring, we always have you have one hand up, one hand down. Doesn't really matter which one. That's just so the face, chest is covered, and the groin and stomach is covered. That's also why we have you go into a fighting stance versus, say, a standing here and doing it from a horse stance. Okay, because it's easier to block this than it is to block that. Okay. Then you have the critical distance line, the line between you and your opponent that determines whether or not you can be hit. If something comes into that critical distance line, you hit it or you adjust your stance accordingly. You do not let anything enter that critical distance line until you're ready to start the fight. You control the timing of this. As long as you control it, you maintain it, you can do whatever you need to do to defend yourself. Okay? So that's center line and the critical distance line. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Kenpo Corner number 7, and I hope to see you back at our next episode. Until then, keep moving forward.